is out of Exodus. If you want to follow along with this, join me there, way back at the beginning. Exodus 34, chapter 29 through 35. And this is a second significant story of transfiguration. This is Moses' story of that experience like Jesus that we're going to talk about a little bit this morning. Moses came down from Mount Sinai. Jesus was up the mountain. This is when Moses came down from the mountain. So things happens on mountaintops. Be warned. So Moses came down from Mount Sinai, and as he came down from the mountain with the 2 tablets of the covenant in his hand, Moses did not know that the skin of his face shone, because he had been talking with God. When Aaron, his brother, and all the Israelites saw Moses, the skin of his face was shining, and they were afraid to come near him. They were afraid to come near Moses. So Moses called to them and to Aaron and all the leaders of the congregation, and they returned to him, and then Moses spoke with them. Now afterward, all the Israelites came near, and he gave them in commandment all that the Lord had spoken with him on Mount Sinai. And when Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil on his face, a mask. We're familiar with those, yes? Come on, people. A veil on his face. But whenever Moses went in before the Lord to speak with him, he'd take the veil off until he came out. And then when he came out and told the Israelites what he had been commanded, the Israelites would see the face of Moses and that the skin on his face was shining. And Moses would put the veil back on his face again until he went in to speak with God again. Two stories, 2 texts, personal experiences, Moses and Jesus, Old Testament, New Testament, okay? 2 big stories, both stories about having direct encounters with God, and not just any old person's direct encounter. We're talking Moses, Moses, and Jesus encounters with God in these stories, and both encounters that left them changed and altered, even them, at their experience. Not just spiritually altered, but in the stories, there was a physical altering of each of these persons as well. Things happened in these encounters with God that just couldn't quite be explained, and they had rather dramatic reactions to the people who were around them. Both stories. Moses, people reaction, they all ran away, flipped out, went elsewhere. Even his own brother, left. Jesus' reaction, Peter, James, and John, stifled into silence. First mentions about them, almost falling asleep, like a shock value over them. And they were left in awe, somewhat speechless. In the end, they didn't tell nobody about what they had seen and experienced. Pretty, I would say, telling and dramatic reactions to these experiences. Encounters with the divine. that even those individuals, that the witnesses they chose to take with them, were left in this state of kind of disbelief and uncertainty, but skeptical, okay, about what they saw, thinking, did I see that, or am I losing my marbles a little bit here, An encounter with the divine. Transfiguration is that kind of experience that happened for both Moses and for Jesus, and that some of us have stories of transfiguration too. Personal stories. Yeah? Some of us, like these transfiguration stories, have personal stories that we don't just invite everybody into them. We maybe select a few over the course of time, but we don't invite everybody in. Why? Right on there, Lori. Thank you. Because we're not sure what the reaction is, what they're going to say about it, what they'll, tell others or not tell others, what they'll think of us afterwards, how they will judge us in some way based on our story. I know some of you have those stories that you've maybe never shared with maybe nobody else, but certainly you really limit who you share that with. My most dramatic story was the day I was called into ministry by God. I call it a psychedelic day because it was this time warp. I mean, it started the moment I woke up and ended sometime at dark. I have no, sense or memory of the time or the space within it, just this vacuum seal of a day that, sound a little nuts when I start talking about it. So even though I, over the years, have been made to share it many, many, many times, there's a vulnerability in it. But transforming, you better believe it, just the same. A day that is unforgettable, even though it's barely explainable. Now, not everyone, I want y'all to hear this, not everyone has had that kind of experience, and I don't want you to feel left out or judged because you don't have a story like that, okay? Don't get stuck in that place because maybe yours is yet to come, okay? So don't get yourself stuck in that place. I know you've had some level of encounter with God, or you wouldn't sit in this space. You've had some level of encountering God, whether you call it dramatic transformation or not, or you wouldn't be sitting here on a Sunday morning instead of home in your bed or on can't use the golf course as an example. I'm not sure ice fishing is good right now, but you get my point. So don't get hung up on the grandeur of your experience. But unforgettable, memorable, yes. We all have those experiences. Now, in the book called The Enlightenment Trap by Scott Carney, he has a quote that I think is most interesting for us to think about today when we're talking about our own transfiguration or transforming stories. He says, there is a fine line between spiritual awakening and insanity. That's pretty good, isn't it? I had to write that down and hold that one for a while. There's a fine line between spiritual awakening, transformation, transfiguration when the physical and the spiritual get changed somehow, and you're adorned in white and you're in radiance and you have this grand conversion kind of experience. Between that changes your life and your heart and remakes and molds you and directs your life in some new way that you didn't have before. Between that kind of transformation experience where the people who witness you don't know what to say about it, and they're sort of left speechless and wondering about what's going on, That kind of spiritual awakening versus insanity, when people are saying, what are they doing? Does that make sense? Is it rational? Why would they change? Is there any reason for that? Or have they just sort of, flipped out and lost all reason and sense of purpose? Have no meaning or logic in what they're doing. See, a fine line between spiritual awakening that drives us deeper into the core of our existence and who we are and what we are and who we want to serve and what we want to be about, and randomness without purpose and meaning. Moses' story, his encounter with God that left him spiritually and physically altered, literally scared away those who saw him afterwards. They left and had to be called back. They left the room. Moses, after that, learned, and he wore a mask. Oddly relatable to us now after the pandemic, and we wore masks and you're out and about and you're not really sure who that person is. So they got a mask on their face. Can't see him. His face had been in God's presence and he glowed and he didn't look the same anymore. In Jesus' story, he selected 3 of his disciples, Peter, James, and John. That was all, 3 of them. He took up on the mountain with him. He had seemingly, there had this kind of shock reaction to what they were witnessing. They were stunned in some kind of a state. Peter's reaction was, let's do something. Some people are passive and inactive at the response, and others have to do something, action or inaction. So Peter wanted to build them a shrine, one for Jesus, one for Moses. That was who appeared with Jesus, Moses. And Elijah, and that says they were overcome with awe, and they left the experience speechless, and they told no one until a later time. They told no one, because what were those people going to think about them? Did they have a spiritual awakening, or were they... People think, what in the world that came over them? Spiritual awakening versus insanity. A fine line indeed. No wonder we sit quiet with our own stories. No wonder we sit quiet with our own stories only sharing when we feel safe and secure enough to expose ourselves and our intimate experiences, lest we be judged and leave others suspicious and questioning of our story and our sanity in the telling of our experience. No wonder we sit quiet. We sit in this room, and I don't know who's got some great experience they're sitting on or not. Do you know? I mean, a few of you shook heads. I saw that. But we sit quiet on it. What a shame. What a shame. I got to this place in writing my words. I'm actually following notes today. Tend not to do that. But I got to this place and I thought to myself, okay, yeah, it is a shame that we don't do that. But okay, maybe there's some purpose in that. I want to redeem the fact that we sit quiet with our stories. Because it's sort of what Moses and Jesus did. Jesus took 3 people up there with him. He didn't take a whole crowd. He didn't take everybody up there to witness the experience. Moses went up the mountain by himself. Okay, so maybe we sit on these most intimate of stories, and there's a purpose in our silences. You suppose? Maybe there's a good reason not to talk freely about them. Not confusing that with witnessing to your faith or inviting others into faith. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these most intimate and personal of psychedelic experiences, okay? Maybe there's good reasons. Maybe the reason we don't share those rare and exquisite moments of the transfigurations in our lives is because our most intimate and deepest moments with God are uniquely ours. Nobody else has experienced them like we have. Like we did. They're our deeply intimate, personal, exquisite experiences and reflect our individual relationship with God that each of us gets to have. As personal and individual as every one of you, plus all the millions and billions of other people who have relationships with their God. These experiences become our core, pivotal values of our faith. They shape and mold us. They are our own spiritual awakenings that change us at our heart level, and we hold them sacred, and they should be kept sacred and intimate. What happens when you take something out of the package too many times? It starts to get sort of beat up and tattered, and maybe it's broken, gets dirty. You know, your shoes don't look so shiny anymore once you've wore them around the barn or walking the streets of town, or, Dennis, if they're just left in the closet for a few years. I think it's a sacred part of our relationship that we get to have between, like a parent and a child, a creator and the creation, between our personal God and our unique individual self. We don't have to lay it all out there for everybody to pick at it, for it to be exposed to. Exposed too much. That most special piece of Christ in us might lose some of its sparkle. That part we hold most sacred, the secretest of our places. Even Jesus had those. Our prayers unuttered, our words left unspoken, our changes on the inside that transform, that transfigure us and our lives spiritually and physically. I think it's okay that we haven't shared every bit of every detail of our most private places, the things that we hold special between us and our God. The things that point us into a clearer understanding that it's not insanity at all that changes us. It is the awakenings of our hearts, the stirrings of the deepest thoughts and reflections about who we are and whose we are. That is our spiritual awakening that carries us deeper and deeper into the arms of our Creator, our Maker, our Source, our God, that our lives may be given in service to the One. No, that's not insanity at all. Your private secret stories. That is instead our awakening, our transfiguration, our sacred encounters with God that leave us reborn and changed and renewed and bathed in radiance. And that is not necessarily something that everybody gets to see. I think I'm okay with that. And I think you can be too. Just your personal thing between you and God. Sort of nice, isn't it? Yeah. Bathed in God's radiance, made ready receptacles for God's will and God's purpose, needing no one else's confirmation of its truth or your experience, just your own, just between you and God. And I say, go ahead and hold your stories precious and sacred and dear, because I know, I believe, I'm sure that God does. And you can do just the same. Yeah?